All right, welcome back to the True North podcast. This week, Ryan and I sit down with Shawn Maguire. I know many of you know Shawn, you know the crazy story that he's been through. We're actually going to walk through a lot of that and hear about what that experience was like, kind of how he got his career as a counselor started and what he offers with that. But man, sit down, buckle up. It's a long podcast. So if you have to break it into a couple different segments, that's okay. We understand. But you'll want to stick around for every minute because it is packed with powerful, powerful stories and content and teaching. It's really incredible. We love Shawn and what all he's done for True North. And so thank you all for joining us this week. And we'll kick it over to the True North podcast. Well, Shawn, what's up, man?
Good to see you guys. Good to be here.
Yeah. Welcome in. Ryan, how you doing today?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm ready for this, man. We've known Shawn for quite a while.
Long time.
I remember meeting him for the first time. It was at a Momentum staff retreat.
Yep.
And he's just bouncing around from table to table, just meeting people, man. Everybody that meets you just knows you're a joy bomb, right?
Yeah.
Like
I love it.
you love people well. You pursue people, and you've been instrumental to where True North is at today.
Amen.
And just
I'm privileged to be a part. It's been an incredible journey. One that, my first True North experience, I was highly pressured to go. It was like maybe the second, third base camp. I don't know. They called it boot camp back then,
yeah,
which people that were back then will get offended if you call it boot camp.
yeah.
And they highly pressured me to go. And I thought, man, this is going to be just another week men's retreat where they're going to talk about, hey, don't look at pornographic images, don't cheat on your wife, don't drink so much beer. I don't even like beer that much. I'm not in college anymore, so it's not my thing. And I actually thought it was going to be so bad, but I was pressured by some really quality dudes that I said, I'll go. But I planned a date with my wife, and I hired a babysitter for Friday night. Now, if you know anything about the base camp, it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I thought it's worth the money to not suffer all weekend. I'll go to just because I said I would and honor my word. But it's just going to be weak. And I'm a grown man. I don't want to pay to be bored.
Yeah.
I've been to church my whole life, and some of it was great. Some of it was super boring.
Yeah.
And
you've been trained in how much counseling
oh my
practices?
gosh. I have 2 master's degrees. I've been to so many different educational things around the country to just get great at helping people and serving people.
Yeah.
And some of them are fantastic. And some of them is just like, if you've been to college for any amount of time, most of it's just suffering to get a card that gets you in the door to places you want to be at.
Yeah.
And so I thought that this would be that.
Yeah.
And I was there, and Thursday night I called my wife, Tanda, and I said, babe, you're not going to believe this, but this doesn't suck. I said, yeah, sure. There's a lot of things that I would like to see changed because it's just started. But man, God's meeting me here. Like, I don't feel the pressure of life, and I just get to be me. And I'm not responsible for anything. Like, I'm not responsible. Like, I'm not leading any of this. I'm just here, which in my life at that time, that's rare.
Yeah.
We have kids. I own a business, and there's just so many things that drew my attention and responsibility. And it was beautiful. And she's like, what do you mean? You said this was going to be weak. It's like all these other retreats you went to with men, and the pastor throws something together the last minute, and it doesn't fit, and you're bored. And I was like, it's just not that. And I said, I don't know what it is, but it's just different.
Mm-hmm.
And so that began a journey that, I was there, like I said, probably the second or third base camp ever. Some of it was so crazy. One guy got up and shared his sexual escapades, and I wanted to get up and tear my shirt and like, what are you doing, man? It's about glorifying God, not the sin you did in your past. But that was a growing experience. That was one of the first times. And the people in leadership didn't know to have people vetted out so strongly like we do today, and to listen to what people were going to say. And there's so much of it that was so raw.
Yeah.
But God was so real in the experience that it drew me back. And then I went, this one we had it twice a year. I went to everyone, and I brought people every single time.
Yeah.
And I would bring clients, I'd bring friends, I'd bring family. I mean, I brought everybody that would possibly consider going. Some of them was my hand was in front of them, pulling them, inviting them. Other times it was on their backs, pushing them.
Yeah.
because I believed in what God did
Yeah.
in my life and what I've seen him do in other people's lives that were drastically different. You know, I think one of my base camps, I sat next to a bartender on my right and a gynecologist on my, or right, left, gynecologist on my left. And it was just such a dichotomous experience. And we all got something very different
Mm.
because it's the space that you're given to deal with the content that's been provided that starts to transform your life.
Yeah.
And part of my journey is I was never addicted to drugs. You know, I don't have a string of affairs. I thought, man, my story's not that impactful.
Mm.
But getting to know some guys and then them asking me about my story, because what I do for a living in counseling and serving others and business coaching is I listen to people's story and I value them and I help them discover what God created them to do and how to break free from the trappings of the past and how to heal and move forward. But I really never had that effectively, directly in a way that I experienced it through the True North, just a space to just be loved and heard and seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I realized, man, I did have so many impactful things of my past. People are like, what are you talking about? Like, you've been through hell and come back.
Yeah.
Like, and they're crying when I'm sharing my story. I'm like, wow. And so that really gave me the space to start a journey that has been going on since from then till now, where in that process, I felt like I was desperately looking for a father. And I'd done so much work through therapy, there's not many people that I can look at and they've done more self-work
Yeah.
on working through their issues than I've done. Because I realized I've had so much happen to me in the past and I needed so much help that I knew that to have any shot at life, I needed to throw myself at the feet of God and ask for help and to surrender so much. But this was just a whole different experience because it wasn't with guys that pretended to be Christians or had a part of a life that was a Christian that they did at church, but then they went and did whatever on the weekends. It was guys who were like, man, I'm effed up, I'm screwed up, you know, and I'm doing this, I'm doing that. But then it was the good guys that have been in church their whole life and were like James McKenzie over here.
Right.
And they're like, man, God spoke to them just as much as the person over here addicted, just as much as the person over here that didn't think their story was that impactful, but yet lived out of the casualties in their heart because of it.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, it just gave me a space to heal, to grow until I started to shift. And it wasn't like a lot of people have these moments of just so fast. And I've had some of those, but most of my experience in life has been God taking me, reading my Bible, messing up, having to go seek and ask forgiveness, and then getting some dudes around me or reading something or somebody's mentoring me from a book like John Eldridge. I've only met him one time, but I feel like the guy's been an instrumental part
Yeah.
Yeah.
in so much of my life. And I don't have to agree with everything John says. People are like, what do you think about John's belief on drinking? What do you think about, I don't know. You're teaching me information. I don't really spend a lot of time finding out what he believes about drinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the heart of a man and the way he's mentored and loved me and you guys and so many of us, and then we've taken that message and we've shared the gospel through that medium.
Yeah.
It's been life-changing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So talk about your family dynamics whenever you first started coming to True North.
Yeah, so I was raised by a single mom, and I probably won't go into depth of that, but single mom comes from a family that has so much trauma. So much trauma. But she was very loving and kind, but really she had me when she was 19, had no idea. Like, what do you do at 19?
Yeah.
You know, today you play video games, you vape, you do whatever.
Yeah.
She had no idea how to raise a kid, so she did her best. She didn't know the Lord. She got saved when I was 25 years old. She was 25 years old, and I was 6. But I had horrible things happen to me. I was molested as a child a few times, so I thought my only value came from women who were attracted to me. You know, that sports, academics, performance-based things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if I wasn't performing, then I was failing.
Yeah.
And I grew up incredibly lonely. You know, my mom is extrovert a little bit, but a lot of introvert. So she's great reading a book all day. She's great praying for 6 hours, which, oh my gosh, I can't even stay asleep for 6 hours. And it's a true story, Ryan.
Yeah.
And, it's just very different, but she loved me the best she knew how. I had a family that loved me, but they had their own issues. And they just didn't know what to do with somebody like me.
Yeah.
And True North and my wife, I really thought I was a great Christian. I really did. When I got married, I was like, man, we're going to raise our kids this way. We're going to do devotionals. And I had all these things. So I read all the books. I've counseled people. I've seen marriages restored so many times. And I just thought, I had it figured out. And I should have wrote a parenting book before I had any kids. Because when I had, not my first kid, Berkeley was, having Berkeley, my first daughter, I just thought, yeah, all my philosophies are right. I'm a great parent. I'm awesome. Obviously, if people would do these kind of things, it'd be great.
Yeah.
And then I had Hayden. And we'll call him he brings me back to Jesus so much.
Yeah.
Because he was born as a warrior.
Yeah.
And he's not complying. He wants to find his own way. He wants to fight. And, a lot of the greatest people in the Bible, David, Paul, Peter, like they were warriors.
Yeah.
And warriors that are not trained, that don't submit to the right king, they burn down villages, they burn down countries, they tear lives apart. But thank God he's come around and he loves Jesus and he's serving him. But at that season, my kids were young.
Yeah.
And it was so, so, so hard to go away because, man, I don't know anybody's belief on kids, but I know for me and my wife, it was the highlight of our lives. Like we both came from so much trauma and so many things. She grew up in a broken home, which her story is so much pain and suffering and just having to figure out life on her own, having to raise her, her siblings because her mom's out trying to figure it out as a single mom and her dad's struggling and so many things that she's gone through. We just had this family that were like, we're going to do this right. But there were so many gaps that we didn't see. And we had some people that we were doing life with that loved God, but they were just on a different level of where they lived and loved. And so when I went to True North, I met real dudes that really screwed up and that were like honest about it. Weren't trying to be more than what they were. That they weren't trying to counsel me. Well, if you would just do this, don't do that and do this. And they're like, man, I bleep this and I did that. And I value that honesty because God can work, I can work through that. I can relate to you struggling. And at the time, I had so much physical pain. I've been in, I had a car wreck where somebody totaled my car, ripped the axles off, threw me in a dam. Wrecked my body. And I'd already had a lot of surgeries, experiences in sports that were really painful. My spleen removed, almost died as a kid. I've had so many near-death experiences, even up to that point.
Goodness.
That I lived in chronic pain. So I had to take medicine for it. I went constantly to doctors, physical therapists, non-traditional medicine. And so we spent much of our time, money, and resources doing that. When you guys first met me, I lived on ice packs. I would bring my own food because I was always trying some kind of new plan to reduce inflammation and it just ruled so much of our life.
Could you go back just for a little bit and speak to, because that's one of the biggest things we see that a lot of men that won't come to True North is, they're being good fathers, right? They have young families and they want to be there for them. And like, they don't quite see how they also need to still get away to be the best father that they can be. Can you speak to that a little bit? Because it sounds like you were kind of in that predicament as well.
Yeah, I was. I really didn't believe my first True North experience. I really, seriously, I had a date planned with a baby, like a paid babysitter for Friday night. And it starts Thursday, 5:30 you get there, right? 5:30, 6:30,
So you had 24 hours.
I had 24 hours I was going to give this. And my foot was out the door. I was ready to go. And the thing that was different is I saw myself, because there's so much space given to go in nature without the pressures of I got to go back and do this and my wife's waiting on this and I've got to go feed the kids or I have all these work emails or people to respond to. I didn't have that there.
Yeah.
It just, the pressures weren't there. It was different. Like day two, it just shifted. And I tapped into a part of myself that was younger that I just, because of life pressures, responsibility, I just skipped over. And he just didn't have a place. And because I needed to survive, I needed to make money. I needed to be a good example. And if you've ever led anything, including yourself, it's a lot of responsibility. And it gave me the space to realize, oh my God, I am hurting so bad in so many ways.
Yeah.
And most of the people in my life, by design, I was serving them because of what I do. And because I do genuinely love helping people. And that's my caffeine. That's my like what I feel great doing. You know, like I would be the guy at the end of the marathon, could just stand there for hours cheering people finishing the
Yeah.
race and just getting excited, hugging them, because I love to celebrate people's wins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I didn't take the time or the space to do it wisely and to realize that, man, so much of my heart had been skipped over in life because of what was happening.
So you've been to base camp, you have a young family, you're starting a counseling practice, or had you been in the counseling practice for
Yeah, I
quite a
had
while?
my counseling practice
And
for a little
so,
while. Yeah.
that's thriving. What else going on in that season of life?
Man, I was in so much physical pain that I had to see doctors. And I mean, seriously, it controlled so much of our life. And I prayed for healing, went to all these healing conferences, did medical procedures, like so many things. And it really just controlled so much of our life. It affected my mood. Um, my doctors would get frustrated because I'd bring in research. I'm like, what about this? What about this? Like,
Yeah.
what about this new treatment? And some of the treatments were in Europe. I just couldn't afford. I couldn't afford to take a month off and $50,000 to go stay
Sheesh.
and do the water bathing and the salt and a lot of the things that maybe would have helped.
Yeah.
But it was based on an accident that I had with a girl that I thought I was going to marry at the time. And somebody just came out of nowhere, just driving down the road, T-boned, ripped, just threw us on all the way, drove us into the dam, smashed my car, totaled the car, taken by ambulance to the hospital. And it would have played out completely different, but the doctor said, I went to the ER and he's like, you're trying to get pain pills. You're trying to, and I just been in an accident where my car's totaled.
Yeah.
And this doctor was just horrible. And so I'm like, that's not what I'm doing. So I just totally changed. I was like, no, I'm not. So I left and I was hurting so bad. I had to go back again. They're like, man, you got some major damage. And it was just a nightmare of an experience. And so I was still living out of that pain, years later with Tanda, and poor Tanda had to deal with it. And it put a lot of pressure and stress on her, on our relationships. Then we had these two beautiful kids that we were homeschooling. Neither one of us had been homeschooled. I went through 1 year of private school, which really helped me. My mom's best friend. So I couldn't get away with anything. Like she was on me like braces on crooked teeth. You know what I mean, Brian? And it really helped shift me to be more accountable, to make better choices going into high school because it was 8th grade. But there was so much going on in my life that giving any time up with my family,
Yeah.
which was like having a little girl, my first child, I thought it was going to be just a sacrifice until they were 5, could throw a ball, could go fishing, have a remotely intelligent conversation. I thought they were just consumers, right? Then I had this little angel come out of my wife gives birth to, and it's like, wow, God left this incredible blessing after the fall. There, a lot of things. I think being naked and yet being able to have sex is one of the gifts God left.
Yeah.
I mean, with your wife.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Only.
the other one is having children.
Mhm.
And for daddies and little girls, there's just something uniquely special
Yeah.
and tender about that relationship. And so I experienced love from my Berkeley. She was our first child in a way I'd never felt before. Like a part of my heart opened up that I just had never been available ever. And and every season I was like, okay, it can't get better than this. And it would get better.
Mhm.
And it would get better. And it would get better. And I'm just like, so why would I want to go anywhere else but to my house and spend time with these people?
Yeah.
Then I have a son and he's a warrior and a fighter, which was very different than my daughter. And so he brought me to a different relationship with Jesus. But together, we as a family, we had so much fun and it was so beautiful in so many ways. That True North, and even you say, Shawn, it's just like 2 real days and then 2 half days. What's the
Mhm.
big deal? Bro, I lived for that weekend because my job, I had to sit. And sitting was the worst thing at the time for me.
Yeah.
There was not a more painful position to be in than I am today. And you're like, well, you're here right now and you don't have ice packs. Well, I can save that story for another day because it's a beautiful thing that God worked through. But man, I would just tell you, for me to be away from my family, I like fishing a lot. I would say borderline was obsessed.
Mhm.
Was going to move back to Florida where I grew up, the promised land. And minus mosquitoes and humidity is the promised land.
Right.
And God just said, if you move back to Florida, you move without me. Well, that's a bad choice, right?
Yeah.
I didn't hear if you move. I heard just in my spirit, like as clear as I've ever heard God speak. If you go back if you move to Florida, you move without me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I called it. And so being here in Oklahoma with my family, I mean, it was such a big suck to, I wouldn't even go fishing that much when my kids were young because I loved them so much and being there. And True North just taught me, and I got to meet so many amazing guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you know this.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
my best friends to this day. You know, my men's group today is Michael Decker and Eric Joyner. They're some of my best friends in the world. Richard Milligan, Trey Dixon, you guys. There's so many people that I'm friends with
Yeah.
that are real dudes. Not perfect, right?
No.
But are real dudes that really are fighting for their families and wanted to do better.
Yeah.
And whereas before, this is no shade on anybody because a lot of people in our previous life groups were great. They're good, godly people. They just needed different things than I needed. Like, I would want you to mentor my kids, bro. If you're in my life, why are you not talking to my kids?
Yeah.
Seriously, why are you not engaging Hayden or taking him out for lunch? If you're a friend of mine, I'm doing that for your kid. I'm investing. I'm engaging and asking them about themselves and making a difference and making an effort to make a difference. Why aren't you doing that for my kids?
Yeah.
If I'm speaking unkindly to my wife Tanda, why aren't you calling me out? She deserves the best. She deserves a gentle, tender. She deserves somebody she didn't get. She deserves better than me. Why would you not say, Shawn, hey, like, you were good. You said a few things. Maybe you should chill out about the books, man.
Yeah.
And I love that about
Mm-hmm.
you guys and about our relationships with real men doing real life together that is really hard. And we need to get in each other's grills and we need to get in each other's grills, but we need to be the guy there to catch when we fall and to be there at 12 a.m. at midnight because you're struggling. You had an issue in your marriage and you need somebody there to walk you through it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
That's what I progressively experienced that I had never had
Yeah.
before my True North experience.
When you didn't even know that you needed it, right?
No,
I
I
think so
didn't know
many
it was
guys-
available in that way.
Yeah. So many guys, I think, resist camp, resist going away for the weekend because there's this idea of all I need is my career, my job, and my family, and I'm good. But it's so far from the truth because we will die. We will suffocate.
Bro. And I will say this. Every True North event, even when you guys know, I responded and I was at like every one for so long because I loved it and I loved seeing people's life change. And I knew if I went with them that they would, I don't know if I think James might've been the one that said, dude, bro, because it started getting too much when you did it every month. It was great for me because I could send people every month and they didn't have to wait. Marriage is falling apart.
Yeah.
You know, it's part of my system of counseling they come back, we have a shared experience and we have that I can walk them through and leverage that more to help them become the man God called them to be. It's a game changer.
Yeah.
Well, I couldn't make everyone, you know what I mean? And James is like, hey, that's a burden you don't need to carry.
Yeah.
That's not yours. You said something like that it resonated to a level of, okay, I don't. That's not mine. That's God's. I'm taking too much. But even in that,
I think we might need a commission actually from you for helping you with your counseling.
That's right.
practice. Like,
Right,
we
yeah.
do half
We'll
the
lay
work
the-
for you.
you
before
do
the
half
groundwork.
the work for me. You know what's so funny
Or
is
God does. Don't miss.
don't miss
Don't
God.
miss
Somebody
that.
said that they're like, man, you gotta figure it out. You get all these referrals from base camp. I said, if you would do the numbers, I bet I send way more people to base camp
Yeah.
Yeah.
than to come to me. I said, in anything, it's a resource that I use because I want people to flourish and succeed. And I know that I've had, at this point, maybe hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of men that I've been a part of sending come back with changed lives. And you've got your business owner that's worth $15 million and you got your guy that's just struggling to make ends meet, barely providing for himself, single dude. And they've all been impacted in their own unique ways because God uniquely reaches out to the guy over here that's worth 15 million and then the guy over here that probably owes everything he has. He owes it. He's in debt. He's, robbing Peter to pay Paul, paycheck to paycheck. Single dude, like both of them are impacted.
Yeah.
Because God uniquely meets them through the experience of base camp because there's so much time free to go process what you've been taught while you're there. That's the difference.
Yeah.
With everything else I've been to, you come home with so much content to go try to figure out a way to implement when you haven't made margin to do any of the work to learn how to implement it. And so it just goes by the wayside.
Yeah.
at the base camp, there's so much time to build connection. You're not responsible for teaching anything. You're not responsible for fixing food. You're not responsible for even if you forget a toilet brush or toothbrush, toilet brush.
Toilet brush.
Yeah, if you forget a toilet brush, you're at the wrong camp, bro.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. We will not.
But if you
make
do like to clean, I
wash
will
the
give you
toilet.
my address because there's always a necessity.
Yeah.
But there is so much space given to just seek and become. And like, I've been since, I've had a horrible tragedy where my house exploded almost. Doesn't feel like 4 years, and I hope we get to it today.
We will, yeah.
But I've been back just to be loved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just, and you guys know, I didn't want any pressure, so I didn't let anybody know I was going. I think last minute I'll text you guys the morning of, and you know what I mean? Because I don't want anybody to go because I was going, and then me not, I'm getting choked up. Me backing out last minute because I'm just emotionally in a tough spot. And it was amazing.
Yeah.
Just to be loved and just to be there with all the connection of memories that I have for the last over a decade of just loving people, loving and just seeing the lives change and being one of those lives is a special connection and relationship that I don't know that you can adequately describe, no matter how much you try and no matter how much you have experts trying to communicate it through video or audio or podcast. But when God meets you uniquely in your story,
Yeah.
there's nothing like that.
Yeah.
And when you're uniquely seen and in the space where you felt like you weren't good enough, like you didn't matter, the insecurities that only you knew or maybe a few other people knew about, and God reaches you there in a non-shaming, non-condemning way and says, bro, I love you. Or whatever language, I'm from Florida, so I like, the beach kind of culture. Whatever language it is, maybe you're from Oklahoma, y'all. I love y'all, or, James Hughes or whatever. It's so connecting to be seen and valued and to not have to hurry up your story because somebody's got a meeting right after you.
Yeah.
It's just special.
Yeah.
And then when you're learning how to be loved and you start to become available to be fathered in that way, well, that starts to change the opportunities of the way that you relate to others. Because it's not impossible, but it's incredibly hard to live one way, trying to I'll just be me for real. Like I am not even remotely close to the guy I want to be.
Yeah.
If I was, I would never have to apologize to my son, my daughters, my wife, my friends, Taco Tuesdays, whatever. I would never have to apologize because I would be loving. I would never react.
Yeah.
I would speak kindly in the way that my beautiful wife deserves.
Yeah.
I would not react to my son's stressed out 16-year-old world that he's in. I would, fatherly come in a strong, secure way. But that's not how that's not my MO. My MO is I need Jesus so much.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I go back. And so to start in True North where they validate it. And here's the deal. It's not one person. Let's be really clear. It's not because Shawn Maguire was there. Trey Dixon was there. Brad Montgomery was there.
Yeah.
It wasn't because of a lot of the original guys that we were together. It's not because of them. It's because of us together, what God did through us.
Yeah.
And that generation. I go back, there's a whole, however many iterations out from our first group of guys that we started with.
Yeah.
It's a different group of guys, and they've got their own ways of doing life and their own ways of rhythms. And it's so much better. Sorry for the OGs. It's so much better today. Incomparably better than when we started with, but God was so faithful to us and all of our screw ups and mess ups and all of our, wrestling. Should we have profanity in the videos? And Shawn was a big no, and somebody else, it doesn't effing matter. And all the things that we did to wrestle with, what should we do? What's God calling us to? What standard of excellence? What standard of, do we want to create? And it was God working through our mistakes but our showing up that really made the difference in our lives in the journey. And dude, look, Brad Montgomery and I had issues over our kids, and I love Brad. He's stellar guy, if you know Brad. And it wasn't the fact that we didn't have issues. We coached football together. We did life together, bro. And his father-in-law was the first guy that took my son and I, him and Richard Milligan hunting, and we got our first deer. I mean, we did life, but we had issues. But you know what? We worked through it and we became stronger.
Yeah.
because of it. And God built us closer together. And now his kid's like a professional fisherman. My son's, I mean, we you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah.
God worked through all
Well,
these things.
yeah, and that's the story of True North, and like all the ways that it were different now from what it was then. Like all the wrestling had such purpose in
Mhm.
discovering like I truly believe we were following God the whole time. Like it wasn't necessary. There have not been many times in True North's history where it's been man's will over God's will. It's always been God. It's just looked like God's just taken this wrestling match into different venues and locations and discussions to get to this point now where we're kind of taking it in yet another new direction
Amen.
Mhm.
that's
Yeah.
beautiful. And so it's cool that it's relationship, right? It's not going to be a clean cut. Like there's not a model necessarily for what we're doing.
And it really, like, even when we coached football, we had an agenda.
Yeah.
We wanted to raise character driven men. We did devotionals before and after. Not all the kids were Christians on the team, but we're like, hey, if you want to be on our team, this is what we do.
Yeah.
And it was so fun, and we learned so much, and we did it together.
Yeah.
And there's so many things that we have done that have been massively, in the moment, you're just doing life. It doesn't feel like you're doing anything big. You're just,
Hmm.
for me, I knew I needed real men to really hold me accountable. And up to that point, I got a version of it, but
Mhm.
I didn't get the version I have now.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how clear, but I'll just say, I was going over something I was talking to my teenagers about in our men's group, and Michael Decker is like, bro, as a grown man, that makes perfect sense. But if I'm your son looking at you, I'm like, dude, you're a dick.
Yeah.
And so out of that came Don't Be a Dick Ministries. And we put that, it's a nonprofit, just like Plank Eye Ministries. If they don't judge you, we will. You can think about that
Yeah.
later and figure it out. But so much of that is just things that we don't see,
Yeah.
exposing it, and then not just exposing it like you suck, you're a terrible person, but walking with you in that adversity, in that situation, coming over. I've had friends have things happen in their marriage where they made bad choices, and I'm at their house at midnight, or they're at our house at midnight, freaking out, crying, screaming. But that's real life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you do when you love people.
Yeah.
I could share the story about what happened to us 4 years ago.
Yeah. Let's
Yeah.
dive into
I'm gonna
that.
jump into it.
Yeah.
So to take that to a whole different level, almost 4 years ago, September 24th, be 4 years, I have this family. It's myself, Tanda Maguire, Berkeley Maguire, firstborn, my warrior son, Hayden Maguire, and we give them name. Before they were born, we prayed, Lord, what identity do you want us to give them?
Mhm.
And now we have another daughter, Everly Joy. She's be 2 on Thursday, June 6th. And what identity? How do you want us to raise them? So Berkeley means reflection of God's personality. Now, Noah Webster may not agree. He might have a different version of what that is if you look it up. But we prayed, and that's the identity. Hayden means mighty warrior for God, which he's absolutely, both of them lived out to their identities.
Yeah.
Because he's a fighter, and she's a fighter. He's a work for it. And she was just beautiful. So 4 years ago, we had a freak accident where we had a propane leak that was non-detectable, didn't smell, nothing. And I got up in the morning to spend time with God. It was, I think, a Thursday. The next day, or even maybe that day, we're going to leave. We had a lake trip planned with some friends, and we're going to come back, and then we're going to go to Florida. This was our big hoorah. And this was 4 days after our daughter, Berkeley's 14th birthday, where in our world, she had a Gab phone, which is like a phone any dad would want their little girl to have, which is locked down on everything except for calling and texting. You had to text it to hit like 5 buttons, 5 times back in the old days.
Yeah.
That's what it was. And she was going to get an iPhone for her birthday, right? Mom's old iPhone. So she was super excited. So 4 days after this, I get up and I press the coffee button. And my life changed forever because my house blew up. And I'm going to allow myself to tap in because I feel like you guys are real. You're friends.
Yeah.
We lived on land. We had beautiful neighbors. I mean, we have neighbors on our right that are Mormons, and just if you want to meet the most beautiful people you could ever imagine,
Yeah.
the Ballards are just amazing people, loving people, servant-hearted. We had some of our best friends in our neighborhood lived on the street over, and then we had a great family that we did life with a lot right across the street. Went fishing. My son played with their kids. We had a beautiful life. Great neighbors. Lived right by the lake, and I would press this button on the coffee, and I felt like I was being electrocuted. I didn't know what was going on because I couldn't move, and I was like this, and I heard, zzzz, and it was like yellow all around. Which, looking back, that's insulation. It was yellow, and I heard, zzzz, had my AirPods in, which my hearing's been massively impacted, but I think it would have been much worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're able to see, I have a scar here that goes through my whole head. And my life blew up in an instant through just pushing a button to spend time with God.
Mm.
And I was buried alive on fire. And I couldn't see. And I remember just being under this rubble, like buried under this rubble. And I could flash open my eyes, but it felt like every time I did, somebody was shooting splinters into my eyes, and they were on fire. And I was in so much pain. I didn't know it was human. If we do another podcast and I go into my story before this, like, you'll see how much pain I've been in physically and emotionally through what I've lived through. But this was a level I didn't know anybody could be alive and feel this much pain. On fire, shards through my body, like just buried alive. And I was crouched down, and I thought this could be the end of Shawn Maguire. And I was like, help me. And I felt like I was in a movie, like one of those movies where they've been wrecked or something's happened and they've been in shock. But the pain was so overwhelmingly impactful. I knew it wasn't, but it sounded like a movie. And then all of a sudden I realized, oh my God, my family could be in danger. Like I physically could not move. So those things were the guys on fire, and he's like, I don't know how anybody can move when you're on fire. Like, it's so painful. And I was able to move, but not until I realized my family could be in danger. I think that's really important. When it was just about me, I don't know that I would have survived. And I'm not better than anybody. Like, honestly, I am. It's just, I just love my family so much. And then I opened and then I was able to somehow, either God miraculously got me out, because if you saw where I was buried, there's no way somebody gets out and surviving. The people that came out there, they said, nobody survives this without God's hand. Nobody survives this. And I was out, and I flashed open my eyes, and my beautiful, everything was gone. Like, I don't mean like there were some walls up. I mean, everything was gone. It was matchsticks everywhere. And for whatever reason, I just called out for Berkeley again and again and again. And I had this image that just flashed before my eyes. If you know anything about me, you know I love the beach, grew up in Florida. It is my happiest place on earth. The smell of salt water, there's just so much to it that's just so divine for me. And I saw myself on a beach in an Adirondack chair. I don't even drink very much ever, but I had an umbrella drink, and it was just me in the most beautiful place I could be at in the earth for me. And I said, I will either get everybody from my family, or I will die trying. I will not leave this without every person in my family alive. I won't leave. And so I could barely move. I think I was partially naked because of just my clothes burned off. I didn't have shoes on. I don't remember. And I remember this. My neighbor's like, Shawn, you've got to come. I was like, no, I've got to find my kids. And mostly it was screaming for Berkeley. And the only reason I said Tanda and Hayden is because if I died, I wanted them to know that I love them. But in my heart, it wasn't. It was just compelled Berkeley. And her room, where she was at, like the coffee pot was here. I don't know if you can see the video, but the coffee pot was here. I was this far. She was on the other, headboard was on the other side of the wall where the whole house blew up. So she was here, coffee was here, I was here. And we were this close. And so they said she probably died from the trauma. But I didn't know. And I went, and I finally was able to sit down. They helped me. They promised that my neighbor, Mike Ballard, comes up and he says, Shawn, what do you need? And I said, I need Berkeley. I need you to find Berkeley. And he said, within 30 seconds, I found Berkeley. And then everybody went quiet. They just found her leg sticking out from under part of our roof that had blown off and was in a different place. And I heard a story that was not good to hear, but then I heard a story from Mike Ballard of what happened. And he said, Shawn, she looked so peaceful. There's not a doubt in my mind that she immediately went and she was with Jesus with no pain, no suffering. And he's like, when I touched you, I felt Jesus, I felt your Father's heart inside of me, and Jesus, just give me that. And I found her within 30 seconds, and nobody was able to find her before that. And it was, I mean, it's surreal. I will tell you, I'm sitting there, and I'm in so much pain, so much suffering. And the people, I was praying at the top of my lungs and screaming and begging God, take me, because I didn't know for sure that she was, but I really thought in my spirit I knew. I thought, take me. God, I would gladly give my life for my daughter. Gladly, please. And I got in the vehicle, and they're like, Shawn Maguire, the marriage counselor? I've been trying to get in to see you for And I was begging them on the ride, which I think they should make a law that ambulances have to have better shocks, because it felt like I was riding in the back of a Jeep. And oh my God, I was in so much pain. I thought there's no way I could feel the needle. I felt every single thing they did. I never lost consciousness. I was in shock, but never in denial.
Now,
There's
did you
not a-
have any contact with Tanda or Hayden before you got in the ambulance? So you had no idea.
They said Hayden was all right and that Tandem was all right. And they didn't say anything about Berkeley. And I said, I don't want to know until I get the pain under control, because I legitimately didn't know if I thought I could die.
Yeah.
Like I thought I would stroke out, because I was in so much pain and just on fire. Like my arms melted, my face melted. I mean, you guys saw pictures. Got to the hospital, and it was so bad. Like I remember getting there, and then even the nurse is like, "Are you the Shawn Maguire that does the marriage counseling?" And it's so funny. But I tell you that because I'll tell you later that those people were incredibly kind to me and went above and beyond, that knew me from that.
Yeah.
But when I was there, the doctor comes in and he's yelling about something, and the person that got in, he got in because he was a pastor, and my mom was there, and she's like, say something to your family. Because I heard them say, he might not make it. You need to get a video. You need to get something. And I'm hearing all this, right? I never lost consciousness.
Right.
And I feel like they're just injecting me with stuff that's not helping me reduce pain at all, like at all. And so I just said something about, you guys, I love you. Somehow God's going to get us through this. And whatever else I said, not knowing that I would make it, that I love them, and that God, trust God or something like that. Because I knew that could be the last thing they ever hear me say. And then the doctor comes in, and I guess he got really mad because they didn't clean my wounds out because they were trying to get my pain under control. They immediately moved me to this place, and I'm so scared, and I can't see. And I'm like, I need to hold somebody's hand. And this lady, I think I did a video with her, this nurse, she comes in, she holds my hand, and I am screaming. They stretched me out. And I'm begging for mercy. I was like, oh, and before I said, I don't want to know, somebody came in and said, hey, your daughter didn't make it. We're sorry. And I thought that was it. I really thought I would die, but I didn't. So after that, I begged for mercy, like, please just let the medicine kick in before you do this, please. And they just scrubbing or scraping my face. It felt like velociraptors on top of me. I mean, so when I think about the crucifixion of Jesus, I can't imagine, bro. I can't imagine. I mean, I can't imagine, because what I went through, I didn't know somebody humanly could go through that much pain. And I've been through a lot of pain, if you know my story, like a lot of pain. And I didn't know you could live through that. And so in the hospital, it was hell. Turns out Tanda had COVID. And so she couldn't see anybody at all. And I think one of the nurses threatened to call the news. if they didn't let her see her. So I forget, one of the nurses advocated for us so strongly that and compelled them, because it was the height of COVID. People
Yeah.
freaking out, right?
Yeah.
So the only people who got to see me were snuck in, or I mean, there's all these stories. People tell me how they snuck in and they did these tricks, and you know what I mean. To be able to see me, because they just had it on lockdown, and they had the four guys, 3 of them True North guys, were there around the clock, and I mean, you know, Eric had a schedule that kept the nurses accountable. You know, and my mom was the night shift, and I mean, and mom was the day shift, and they just had guys at night that would come in, and all I wanted them to do is read the Bible. And it's not because I'm holy or I'm like anything other than I knew God was my only hope to make it through this. And I even know, even on the ambulance ride, I said, I'm not gonna be able to work for a year. I can't work for a year. There's no way I can't work for a year. I even knew that day I couldn't deal with anybody else's trauma and issues, especially with like, even before this happened, I didn't think I could live without my kids.
Yeah.
Like, I thought, like, I love them so much. And Berkeley, she's so kind-hearted and sweet. You know, I've said, if I could live my entire life, you know, most people live and they can live 80 years. And my daughter lived in 14 years with serving, loving, and going for it with, you know, acting and volleyball and all the things that she did and the way she served and loved Jesus and others. An 80-year-old person probably couldn't compete. And I pray that I could, at one point, get to the point where I love and serve and am as kind-hearted as she is at 14 years of age.
Yeah.
And it felt like I refused to accept it. So I didn't tolerate anybody talking about the funeral, because in my belief system, I was like, God, you've got to resurrect him. You resurrected from you were raised from the dead. You raised others from the dead. You can do this. And so I only wanted to hear Bible. I only wanted it. And people brought me food because, you know, hospital food is poison. It's terrible for you. It slows down your healing. At least that's my belief. And so I had people bring me food that's healthy. And because I did everything I knew to do as best as I could with where I was at to get out of the hospital. So much so when the doctor, I said, what do I need to do to get out? And I can barely walk, you know what I mean? And I'm in so much pain constantly, and I'm still crying most of the day. He's like, well, we need to get that feeding tube out. I said, can we do it right now? And I was in the hallway going through my morning walk. He's like, yeah. So he cut it. And I didn't know this, but I thought it was like 12 inches. It was 60 inches. So I'm like, like kind of freaking out in the, you know, hallway. And he was like a general in the Army, like the reserves, a general or colonel. And he's like, I've done this for however many years, decades. I've never seen anybody do that. But I say that because I just needed to get out.
Yeah.
And I needed to love my daughter, and I needed to raise her and believe that God would resurrect her from the dead. And so in the hospital, like I remember Richard Milligan, he's like, what do you need? He's such a need meter. And I was like, I don't know, man. I don't know. And I don't know if somebody told him I didn't have a toothbrush. Somehow he gets past security because he's that kind of guy, you know, he's a charmer. And he comes up with all this stuff. And that's just the way it happened for us. People just showed up and blessed and gave. And, you know, like I said, the 3 True North guys was connected to the Greater True North organization and people and brotherhood. And you guys were great. Loving, bringing, taking care of my family when I'm not there, bringing stuff by. Like,
Man, I don't even know if you know that that day was crazy for us. Like, it. I mean, we were like the hub of everybody calling to find out what's going on. How can they help? I mean, we had people coming by just weeping. And it was just talking about like a family, right? Like, and that's why I share that, like how beautiful, like how much True North Nation cared for you and your family and what they wanted to do for you. And
it was incredible. And legitimately, without the love of True North and people in our lives and the community, we would not have made it. There's not a part of me that believes, like, even in the hospital, people would come up and visit, and if they weren't make it, I'd walk down, and I'd try, when I could walk, I'd try to make it down, and they'd, you know, we'd visit, and they'd bring food, and what do you need? And, you know, Hayden and Tanda got out way before me. I mean, But I have a wife that woke up with her feet flying backwards over her head. That's how she woke up. I have a son who just woke up in the yard on just his arm melting. And my neighbor across the street, Jason, said, Shawn, I saw your son sitting and watching TV. He'd be like, ah, scream. And then he'd watch and he's like, I didn't know if he was going to live or die. He's like, I literally saw his face start to melt from where it was burned and his arms and his legs melting off of, like flesh melting off of his body. And the community aspect of like Oklahoma City in general, and Edmond, and then the True North Hub, and then the churches like All Saints, and then Frontline, and then other places like Life Church. I know a lot of people from Life Church, and just other places we've been. Just showing up. We stayed in somebody's rent house that offered us to stay in their rent house. When I was in the hospital, one of the ladies that was trying to get in, they were trying to get in for premarital with me. She came up and put cream on my body every night when she worked. And her husband or fiance was the security guy, and so they walked me, and they just took exceptional care. The lady that held my hand, she came and tried to switch her schedule so she could care for me. These two nurses got in a fight over I had a skin graft and my back stuck to the bed and I couldn't get off. It's like, remember Jesus, they ripped it off. So that's what happened to me.
Yeah.
And they argued over it, about how to do it, because they both cared.
Yeah.
And not that everybody was, some people were mean, and thank God I had people checking my medicines. I went into a seizure once because they gave me the wrong medicine and they were trying to do all these crazy things. I was like, nope. The doctor listened to me. He's like, all right, we'll try your way. And thankfully it worked. But they had like a list of what medications and when they were given, and I wouldn't have been taken care of. There's no way my family could take care of that.
Yeah.
They don't have they didn't have the resources, even if they were normally mentally healthy, to do that. And like I said, 3 out of the 4 guys that stayed around the clock were my True North brothers.
Yeah.
Do you feel like, listen, I think it's incredible that, right after the explosion, even on the way to the hospital, you're talking about like, I'm not going to be able to work for a while. Like, you're recognizing the trauma that you're experiencing. And so there's some identity in that, right? You are a counselor, and that's so much of who you are and your identity. But how's your identity through this process, through community, but also just in the way that God pursued you in the last 4 years? How has that changed for you?
I would say it's still a journey. I would say I'm in the middle of a journey that is continually beseeching God every day to rebuild trust. Because I want you to think about this.
Yeah.
I didn't get up to look at porn.
Yeah.
I didn't get up to gamble, to drink, to do anything nefarious or wrong. I wasn't, we all sin, but I wasn't living in any sin. Like there wasn't some dark secret that came out that you'd find. Like all my friends knew everything what's going on in my life, things I'm working on. And so at a baseline, being able to trust God again for my family is still a walk. Now, eternity, knowing what he did for us on the cross, purchase price, but being able to pray and trust that God's going to come through I'm still shaky.
Yeah.
I still pray. Like if you were to look at my life, you'd say, yeah, I mean, you know what I mean? I feel like people look and they have an opinion of like, wow, he does this. You're such an inspiration. And it is real. But I will tell you, so is getting up at 4:30 or getting up at 5. Or so is doing a cold plunge just because my body hurts so much because I don't have the same body. Since then, like I prayed. We did listening prayer for what knee doctor to go to. And I went to the guy screwed my leg up so bad. I had to get that knee replacement out. And now I have a rod inside of my femur and inside of my tibia and another knee replacement revision that hurts nonstop, that affects the way that I walk, that I can't run anymore. And I've been so much pain and suffering still, like today, because of that. And I got up to spend time with God. I did our due diligence. I called a professional fireplace company, and not because we had it inspected. Propane came out, they inspected it. We had to switch companies, they inspected it again. And they said, well, we had some kind of illegal. I'm like, illegal. Like I called a fireplace company. That's all they do. Just because in my spirit, like, let's just make sure this is safe. We use this fireplace a lot. Let's just make sure it's all good. Because I don't know fireplaces, and they do. And so we hired professionals. Like within the last year before that happened
Yeah.
to just make everything was up to code. And everything was great. And there was things that the insurance company did and a propane company did that weren't right. Because if they get put to the wall, we were told that if we pursue it, that we would be accused of our daughter's murder in the criminal court. And it's not that they would win, it's that we would never make it to trial. No, the gas company never called me and told me that. But the attorneys, they said, look, this is what they'll do. This is what any good attorney that doesn't care about life does. And they'll make sure one of you commits suicide. I can't do that.
No.
And so feeling so uncovered, and I was more physically weak than ever. I was so weak that, you know, my son, people just bought us gifts because they don't know what to do and they wanted to do something. So one of my good buddies, Steve Milkey, he sent this Millennium Falcon, and the boxes felt like, at the time they felt like they're 300 pounds. They might be like 35 pounds. No, I don't know, 50 pounds, who knows? There's these 2 boxes, and I picked it up. It was so heavy, I dropped it, and it hit my leg, and it cut it. Like, it looked like you'd take a knife, because my legs are burned, and all the skin was burned off, and so it was like paper. And it was just bleeding everywhere. And I was so weak, I couldn't even put my son's Lego together and pick it up. Like, that's where I was. But here's the value of community. One of my brothers, he said, Shawn, he's like, you got this all wrong. He's like, you're not weak. He's like, you survived an attack by a Millennium Falcon, bro. Who does that? A direct attack. And you know, it didn't get me through the day. It got me through the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had, like, a lot of my True North brothers, like Michael Decker drove from Stillwater every week to take me out once a week. I had people come over every single day to take me out. So because I did not hear God.
Yeah.
This is answering your question. I did not hear God. I read the Bible and I saw him, and people's like, that's not who you are. You're this. And I was like, I don't know who I am anymore.
Right.
I don't know who I am. I don't know who Shawn Maguire. I know who he was. I can read what people say. I can listen. But my identity, like every wall, like my daughter, Berkeley, was part of my purity. Like she was threaded through all of my purity decisions of how I made good choices in life. Is that we lived on land that we loved. You know what I mean? It wasn't too much. It was just enough. And we had a trampoline, a volleyball court up. We had a slack line. We had a zip line. We lived life, bro. But yeah, we could go fishing. The lake was right there.
Yeah.
And we were close to town. And all that was taken away, robbed, stolen in an instant. My health was stolen. My wife's health. Her hair burned to her head and she had to cut it off. Like it literally burned to her head. Her face burned. Her arm, like.
Yeah.
And so you tell me, and I got up to go to the person that I trusted more than anybody ever in the history of my small world, which is God. And I worked on putting myself in a position for him to heal that father wound.
Yeah.
The mother wound, all the things that we all grow up with in different ways. And that's the one that I don't believe he did it to me, but I know he has the power to stop it.
Yeah.
And in my finite mind, I know the way I resolve this is the through line goes through eternity. In my capacity, I can't even go through my entire body and tell you all of my organs and where exactly they are, why they feel this way, all my bones and why this feel. So why would I think I could understand an infinite God who's lived for eternity and will live into eternity? I don't.
That's good.
But that's what gives me the solace that somehow in his grand design, you know, Berkeley had a lot of physical issues that she struggled with that we don't know the origin of. That could have been something that maybe was really bad and God knew.
Yeah.
And so instead of letting her suffer, that she had finished her race, because seriously, and to a fault, I'm too honest. My wife will tell me.
Yeah.
And you guys know I'm pretty honest, that she was truly like Jesus in a way that really, when she was taken from our lives to heaven, it felt like his presence left.
Yeah.
She sang, brought the melodies of heaven to earth. She laughed contagiously, which I love to laugh. And when she was your birthday, she would get more excited than about her birthday, because she would make a list of what she could do. She'd look at her budget. She's just 14, bro. And this is the through line. She loved wrapping gifts, had a gift wrapping service she undercharged for because she wanted everybody to be able to afford it. And she looked for ways to bless others.
Yeah.
And so when you say, you know, how has it affected your relationship with God? How are you? I would say I am stronger than I've ever been in eternity. In my mindset of believing where we're going to go and how it's going to be.
Yeah.
And that God's got us through this process. But my prayers and believing on earth of God coming through have been massively compromised. Just like my body.
Yeah.
I listened to God and I prayed with brothers that I love. And a lot of people, not just them, a lot of people about what doctor to go to. That's a yes or no. That's this guy or this guy. And I picked the guy that screwed my knee up. And the next guy, thank God, because of our story, he got me in and took great care of me, did his best. And I think he's a savant, Paul Jacobs. He's hands down a savant. I've only met a few in my life in what he does.
Yeah.
And could not have been more. I thought he'd be he wasn't cocky at all.
Yeah.
Kindest, loving. He's built like Samson. He's a big man. Played for the Redskins. But I say that to say, that's not the route I would have chosen ever.
Yeah.
And I don't know why God's humbled me from being able to be super athletic to, I mean, I still could play pickleball. We played beach volleyball, and I used to be really good.
Yeah.
And I won tournaments back in the day when I was, your guys' age, like James, barely 30 years old. And I got a bucket list item. Like, this is how God works. I was able to play beach volleyball against good players, and we won a game.
Yeah.
Now, you guys are like shocking, but you don't see how I literally could not run 10 feet.
Yeah.
I could like walk fast, but I couldn't run. And so the fact that I was able to do that in a way with my son, it was a dream that I had since I played volleyball competitively in Florida. And that's a huge blessing, right? Yeah. It's not the way that I wanted. We're not playing in a tournament. I'm not skying and hitting the ball down. I'm playing smart. But I would say God has given me enough and the people around me. And here's the thing. Do I think you should put your faith in people? No, I think that's misappropriated.
Sure.
Do I think God works through people and you need to take what he gives you? Yes.
Absolutely.
And so people were the way God loved me. And also I will tell you, there's this lady, Raina. She sent me words of knowledge that were profoundly impactful. Like, I've had people send me words of knowledge that were encouraging. Like, I see Berkeley in heaven riding on a unicorn. She loved horses. And a lot of people said things like that. I see her reading books to little children in heaven. Yeah. I see her. One person said, my childhood friends flew up, Eric and Chris. My childhood girlfriend reached out, said we could come down and stay. My high school girlfriend, their kids are grown, and, they'd love us to come stay with them. I've talked to her since high school.
Yeah.
And, I'm above 40, just a little bit. And she said that she saw Berkeley with Jesus, because there's so many times I felt like she was so close, especially when I was in Florida, staying at my buddy Steve Slauson's house. He has a house on the beach, and he kindly let us stay there right after. I felt like the chasm was so close when I was looking over the ocean. I felt like it was like almost I could touch her. It was so close, but I just couldn't. I got some texted me that, they saw Berkeley there looking down, and then they're looking up, and she left the side of Jesus to come over, and like eternity and heaven's up here, and she looked over down onto earth, and she goes, "Tell my dad I'm okay. Tell my dad I'm good." Yeah. Something like that. And on the outside, that might seem like a huge deal, but I was in so much pain. I wept all day. Yeah. Like seriously, almost all day I was crying, weeping. Like every 5 minutes I'd just weep. It got me through that moment. And then another text. And then, this morning I told you I was meeting with my guys. Today, Eric Joyner was just able to make it. And I saw somebody that I knew, and Natalie, and she comes over and she's like, "Hey, I just did a paper on you." And she's like, "I wanted to call you, but I didn't want it to be creepy." And she's like, "But I did a paper on you. Yeah. You're one of the best counselors we know, and just you've been through so much." And she said, "You just impacted." She's like, what would have been a dead end for almost everybody, you made it into a speed bump.
Mm.
And she said all these really encouraging things, right? Like literally, I was 3 minutes late here because I was talking to her.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just that's how God has moved in our life.
Yeah.
It's, we want this way to be clean. I want my knee healed. I don't want to wake up with cramps most night. I have to sleep with ice packs on my back. I don't want to have to do a red light every day, infrared sauna, and then a cold plunge, just so I can get up and function. I don't want to, there's a lot of things I don't want to have to do. But God's given us the resources and the grace to be able to show up and do it.
Mm-hmm.
And being encouraged by her right before I come in here to see and meet with you guys.
Yeah.
Like that's how I would say God's moved in my life. It's not giving us the easy, oh, you're healed, praise the Lord, which I pray for. And part of the thing that I'm so glad to see, but it's also frustrating, is when I counsel people, I have a really high expectancy that they're going to succeed. Because when I accept you as a person, I don't accept everybody. If you come to see me and I don't feel like we're a great fit, if I don't see a vision of how you could be, how I could help you it's not just how I could help you change your life in amazing ways. That's our agreement.
Yeah.
And if I can get behind that and you'll let me support you in right ways and serve you and walk that path. I'm not just a counselor that takes your money and gives you some advice. Bro, you can watch TV and you can get a good podcast or something to get that.
Sure.
You know what I mean? You can. I believe that. I come alongside you and I partner with you. Sometimes in front, sometimes my hands might be on your back a little bit, just encouraging you strongly because I am invested in your success.
Yeah.
To succeed. And I've seen people get divinely healed through doing counseling stuff.
Yeah.
Like physically healed, like not have to go to the Mayo Clinic, keep their job, and not just a few times. And I'm sitting here suffering. Yeah. I've seen marriages on the brink of divorce saying, our next, if this doesn't work, we've got appointments at 3. This is real. And we have a 4:00 appointment with an attorney to divorce if you don't help us today, right now. First appointment. First appointment's getting to know you, hearing your story, and like making a map of how to,
Yeah.
They're still together today. They were probably, this is like 15 years ago. The counseling cycle is the way that I serve people. I get them connected to their church, to a church, to you, True North. And so they're still in the sphere of people that I know. They're homeschooled now. And so they were part of the people. I met them 15 years ago. They're part of the people that were out there. I saw them in the picture, cleaning stuff up.
Yeah.
Brian, Greg, they're out there, the Gregs, beautiful family. And I have story after story after story after story after story of people that I've been able to impact. And God just seems to work differently in my life than he does most people. I want the quick wins, but a lot of times it's my decisions that are really hard at first. Like I eat pretty healthy, or I could have diabetes. It's hard to eat healthy.
Yeah.
It's hard to have diabetes. I do a cold plunge. It's really hard to do a cold plunge, right, James? Didn't you? We were at that thing. It's really hard to do a cold plunge. We did it at our last base camp. But it's really hard to live inflammation all day at a higher level.
Yeah.
And so I choose the hard. And then over time, it seems like God starts to work. Never as fast as I want. Rarely ever as fast. Sometimes he does. We just bought a house that was really fast. We weren't even looking. It just had a lot of the things we wanted. James, you were there.
Yeah.
We went and saw it the day before, Wednesday.
Yeah.
We had a double date Thursday night.
Yeah.
We saw it Wednesday, double date Thursday night. And while we were with you guys at dinner,
Yeah.
with your lovely wife, they accepted our offer and we have a house. We're moving in 21 days. We weren't even looking. We don't have any plans.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
rare.
Yeah.
But it's also atypical. Shawn Maguire does not make a decision that much money without doing tons of research,
Yeah.
moving stuff
Well,
around.
one thing about that too, like your dream home that you
Yeah.
lived in on land,
Yep.
and now you've been in a home that's been good, but
It's post-up home.
It's restrained
Yeah.
some of your desires
To have community.
to have community, to have. I know fire is a big
Yeah.
deal for you, and you were limited on how much you could
How
do
many
that.
fires I could have. Yeah.
Yeah, and now just randomly, y'all weren't
Yeah.
even looking,
No.
right?
Mm-mm.
And
Tana
God,
somebody sent Tana something, and it's in a neighborhood that they're the most community-driven neighborhood I'm aware of. We were out there, and I met people just looking at the house, and the guy's texting me stuff. Hey, I think I can help you get this house. I'd love to have you in the neighborhood. I don't ever even met this guy.
Yeah.
His name is Reed, and he's an awesome guy. And we just walked the neighborhood. I mean, we were just standing there in front of it, and I said, hey, what do you think about this neighborhood? And so I would say, back to your question, I've never wavered in my faith in believing that God is real.
Yeah.
I know Tanda and Hayden have struggled in their own ways. And I will say, I've changed my philosophy of grief a lot.
Mm.
It's way more honoring, not of all the, sorry, I have a lot of really strong opinions about the forefathers of counseling, about counseling psychology that boxes people in.
Yeah.
It says you have to do this modality, you have to do EMDR, you have to do ETT, you have to do CBT. I'm so against that. I think there's one way to heaven.
Yeah.
Through Jesus, but there's lots of ways to healing through art form of counseling. There's lots of ways to parent your kids. I think you guys, we talked about this. I think you parent differently in some ways than we do. And you parent, and I think God works through all of that as long as you're being faithful to what he's called you to do.
Yeah.
But I think it's the journey of just uniquely who you are and who that person needs you to be, what that person uniquely needs. Like grief is a place where, Bill, if you ever sit with anybody, if somebody lost something, a lot of times, just go up and say, man, I don't know what to say, but I want you to know I love you and I'm here, and just touch. Put the date they lost that in their phone and just said, love you, praying for you today. Can I bring you a coffee or something today?
Yeah.
What can I bring you? Don't ask, can I? What can I?
Mm-hmm.
Do you need? Hey, what's your favorite oils? That lady that I saw today, she said, hey, what do you need? And she's like, I know you eat healthy. What about spices? And I was like, we don't have any spices. She's like, I got you. And Natalie went and bought spices for us.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And
that's
just so the grieving process, it just changed the way I approach counseling. Way more compassionate than I've ever been.
Yeah.
Now I'm still a driver. If you come to see me, you need to expect that I'm gonna constantly invite you to be better and to grow and to accomplish your goals. And just, I'm not the counselor that lets you meander in your problems and suffer. Like, I want you to thrive and be set free. So my counseling journey was a lot more difficult. I think the counselors were okay. I just said, I'm not going to mention their names. I just didn't get remotely what I give.
Right.
You're talking about post.
Yeah, for me. One of the counselors, after 3 or 4 times, they said, Tanda, I think you're done. I was just utterly shell-shocked. I could not believe they said that. That you're done. I was like, you're not even starting to unpack trauma, and you can't say she's done. That's impossible.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way with everything that we've been through. Because I just have high expectations of what we do in our time together.
Yeah.
And I give what I would want you to give me, and that's get to know you, counsel you from where you're at, counsel you based upon who you are, but also have standards of like, let's do work every session.
Yeah.
I want you to know that I care.
Yeah.
Because this is not just a transaction. This is a real relationship where I am 100% for you. And then we go from there. Because if I get that, well, then we can do some work. Because if you trust me, then I can really take you really far. We can do some amazing things in your family, your life, your generations, your marriage, your kids, whatever you're coming in for.
Yeah.
We didn't get that. And we got people that cared for sure.
Yeah.
I will, let's just say at one point, one of the counselors I saw acted in a way that was not ethical. And I addressed it in a way that I would not ever address it today, because I have most of my brain back now. Let's just say I said some words I probably would not use today because of it. So you got to be careful who you go to and you see. And I was in a very vulnerable position and was taken advantage of in some ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I didn't have capacity to deal with it.
Yeah.
But with God, it's really the thing that I knew is I needed to do it the way that God called me to live, which is very different than what James needs.
Yeah.
So I came home from the hospital. Hayden was playing maybe 10 to 12 hours of video games a day, felt like. Bro, we had 45 minutes screen time, TV and video games a day before I went in.
Yeah.
So I came home. He's playing it in the living room of a rent house. Thanks to the Susan and Hank, they blessed us with a rent house. Jeff Clickall. I mean, so many people offered us to stay in their houses. And I mean, it was incredible. And our friends made the choice of where we stayed. And they had it on the big screen, this TV. He was in there. It was just like they weren't even dealing with it. So I couldn't get away from it. And I'm picking out celebration photos for my daughter's celebration. And I feel like it's the only thing I have control of at the time. It's my last thing to say. And how do you take a life of 14 years and put it in? And they're like, hey, you don't make it too long. I was like, screw that. What do you mean make it too long? Like I was like, I had no emotional capacity to deal with nonsense at the time. Like I was a different version of Shawn Maguire because I just was raw and my feelings were everywhere on the outside. My body was weak. I just didn't have a lot. It was all this medication. I only slept about 2 hours a night because I was just traumatized and I was in so much pain all the time.
Yeah.
And thank God, Eric Joyner and his team at ICG, he got volunteers. Him and Doug worked on it all night, put together the most amazing. They had a guy volunteer to shoot the video, which I was going to do it live. And I'm so glad he convinced me to do a video.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was so believing that she was going to be resurrected from the dead. That's all I would allow myself to believe.
Yeah.
When I got out the whole time, that I was like, hey, I need to make sure do you have the keys? Because at any given time, I will stop this ridiculous thing and I will get up and I will demand that you open this box. Because I was the whole time waiting. There's no way I could have got up and done it.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting with the guy, and I know I'm jumping around. It's just so much. Sitting with the guy, the funeral guy. He's a Christian dude. And I'm like, he's going over the caskets, and I want to rip your effing head off right now. I don't want to stuff it down your neck. I said, how dare, I said, I don't mean this towards you. I need to vocalize this. How dare you talk to me about my daughter? How dare you bring up, she's 14, bro.
Mm-hmm.
She's 14. People covered a lot of the cost of things, but we had like millions of dollars of bills, bro. Millions of dollars. The insurance company was ridiculous. This lady that we dealt with was horrible. She asked me for receipts. Where's your receipts? You know my house blew up. Why do you keep asking me every time for receipts? What's this? And she would just do horrible things. Mm-hmm. I mean, everybody has it, but our situation, like, it was just horrible.
Yeah.
Thank God I had an assistant that helped me out with a lot of the stuff. But I just remember just thinking, like, how dare you? Like, I couldn't even write checks for some things. Like, there's a balance bill from the EMSA. I'm like, there's a balance bill from that they thought that was covered by the donations. It wasn't covered. It was like 13 grand. I told my friends, I said, Eric, I can't write this check. F them. Screw them. You're charging me for the death of my dad. Here's the deal. I didn't have anything against the people. Right. Like one guy said something to me that was stupid. He goes, I told my wife when it happened, we need to make sure we do this and that. And he goes, you know why people are nice to you? Why? Because they don't want to be you. They're glad they're not you. Mm. And I thought, what's interesting though? I didn't get offended because I knew the guy's that's just the kind of, I don't know the guy at all, right? It's the first time I ever met him. But I thought, it's just you. But the stuff about my daughter, like, it wasn't against the people. It was against like the situation. Yeah. Like, how wrong is it? It's just like, look, it's not one for one. James can't go give somebody $100 and expect to get $100 over here. It's not like that. You can't go mentor somebody else's kids and expect God to mentor yours the exact same way. Yeah. It's a sowing and a reaping, and God designs how he does the reaping. Yeah. And yeah, I want to believe the prosperity gospel purely, that when we do it, we'll get the nice things, we'll get this, and God will. But I would just tell you, the experience of my life is very different. When I read the Bible, that's not what Paul had. That's not what Peter had. That's not what David had. But I still struggle with it, bro. Mm-hmm. Like, that was my sweet little girl. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we all want to think we would give our lives for him. And I would like to think I would do it again. Yeah. But bro, gladly. Like, I would tell you, for the first year and a half, I had to, and I never wanted to commit suicide, because my belief on suicides is, I'm not sure you go to heaven. And I would never tell somebody that's kid or somebody they love committed suicide that they're going to go to hell. That's just not what I would say ever. I think I don't see a benefit to that. Right. I wouldn't want to take the chance personally. Mm-hmm. Do I think you will? Maybe. Do I want to take the chance personally? I would not want to take the chance. Mm-hmm. But again, I would never say that to somebody. I think that's going back to being Job's friends, not the friends of Jesus. Yeah. If you want to be loving and meet people where they're at. But how do you explain that? How do I go through life and believe God? So I'll tell you, it's been really hard to not be controlling of situations where I feel like my family's threatened. Mm-hmm. Or before I was able to release it more easily. Like the whole buying the house that quick. Bro, come on. That was a God thing. Because that's just not how I've been. Yeah. I wanted to measure all the things and reduce liabilities and exposure to things that can be hurtful and harmful um, to people that I love. Because the person I love more than life and have trusted everything to him allowed this to happen.
Yeah.
And so I haven't fallen away.
Yeah.
It's really scary.
Yeah.
I believe God loves my family more than I can ever imagine. And I believe I don't understand love.
Yeah.
I don't understand that kind of love. Because I know one of my friends, Trey, at my birthday party, I think it was my 50th or 40th, something like that. And he said, would you really want her back if you could, knowing all that you know the hell that you're living through, know that? I said, hell yeah, I would. Absolutely. Why? You're freaking nuts. Even though, yes, yes, every part of me, yes. I know that I'd say the same answer today. Almost 4 years out. But a year out, 6 months, yes, absolutely. Because I only thought about her all the time. And I love her so much.
Yeah.
And she brought so much joy. And, you know, I will say my last night, it wasn't the best night. Like I went in and asked her I was like, hey, I didn't know Tana said she could stay up and practice her lines. I thought she was supposed to be in bed. And I was like, hey, and it wasn't like a bad, it just wasn't beautiful. Like I still tuck kids in and it just wasn't the beautiful thing that we were used to.
Yeah.
Tana did get some time with her and was able to drop her off to youth group and pick her up. And they had some sweet time. And they went and got something to drink afterwards, which is special for our family. And but it wasn't like I had a memory to hang on, the last memory. But I did have a lifetime of videos. Even though our computers and back before the iPhones, we didn't have a lot saved like that. It was on our computers that destroyed. But we had enough letters. We had her journal. We had people coming up to us saying things that she talked about me, about our family. And that's been incredibly special.
Yeah.
And people come up, like meeting that lady right before and saying what she said was really encouraging.
Yeah.
To hear, because people move on. And it's different for us, but we've not moved on. We'll never move on.
Sure.
We just walk through.
Yeah.
Which is different. She'll never not be my first child, my one that showed me a realm of God's miraculous love I didn't know was possible this side of heaven. That's different than marriage. That's different than work. That's different than buddies. It's just a daddy-daughter special, innocent love, where the way they look at you, nobody else can look at you that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When they're in their arms, their head, and you know, in God's faithfulness, science and Jesus, we pulled out all the stops, and now we have another child, Everly Joy. And God, we prayed a lot about her.
Yeah.
Everly Joy. And she's a joy bringer wherever she goes. Like you guys know, I'm a connector. I love people.
Yeah.
She's a connector without limitations. So we're in the airport. And she's barely one, just started walking. And she's like walks up to somebody and goes like this. And they look at her. And she smiles and she'll walk over to somebody else. Somebody's in a wheelchair. She put her hand on him. And just sat there and looked at him. And they're talking and she's just smiling. And she goes to somebody and she just loves people. Now sometimes it gets awkward. I was holding her, watching my son play volleyball this tournament. And this lady's looking at me. I'm like, that's kind of weird. And you're pretty tight in some of these places. There's not a lot of room. And I look and my daughter's playing with her hair. And I was not embarrassed at all, actually. I thought it was funny, but I was a little bit embarrassed at first until she realized it was my daughter, not me.
Right.
And she's brought so much life over the last, she'll be 2 this Thursday.
That's awesome.
She's brought life that none of us, including my son, I don't know that he'd say it this way, thought we would see again this side of heaven. I mean, we had 4 people. We wanted more, we tried, God didn't see fit to give us more. And we went on rides. 2 walk, 2 go on this ride, 2 go on the behind it. And we played volleyball, 2 basketball, ping pong, board games. And then we had 3. And since I was slower, there was always me walking behind. And whatever we did, it sucked. And, you know, judge, don't judge. Berkeley was both of our best friends. I think all of us. Yeah. She was our best friend because she was relatable and she met you where you were at. And she tended to think about you. And she's like, Dad, you need to get on Hayden. He was hard for mom today. Or sometimes he's like, Dad, you were too hard on Hayden. Dad, I think you should go say sorry to mom. That wasn't very nice. She's our little in-house counselor.
Yeah.
And we lost that in an instant.
Yeah.
We lost that in an instant. And so we all struggle with that. Hayden had an example of what it's like to be Jesus. Constantly. And I think he's not able to verbalize it yet, but I see the hurts there.
Mm-hmm.
And I see the struggles there. And she was such a great inroad to so many things for him. From volleyball that he still plays, to when he was in acting, oh my gosh, it's so much courage to get up on stage and say lines in front of people. What?
Mm.
When I was a teenager, no way. I hit a ball or throw a ball or kick a ball, but come on, bro.
Yeah.
That's a lot of courage.
Yeah.
It's a lot of courage. And so it's still a journey for us, and it's not the way we thought it would be. Like I really thought this far out, I'd be more like you in that, James, you carry a lot of peace with you. That's why your wife's a baller. I know you're kind of the same way in some ways. Your wife's also a baller. Not that you guys aren't, but you're just matched really well, with the personalities of the type A personalities with wives.
Yeah.
More gentle, slow to speak, quick to listen, slow to become angry. I really thought, I was like, God, 1-for-1 tragedy. They say if weakness is strength is weak, or what is it? Pain is weakness, leaving the body. I feel like I should be the strongest man in the world. It's just not true all the time. There have been things we've done, and we are further. We don't have twice as many kids like Job, but I can relate to Job's story. We've done better financially because taking me out of the business for so long, I couldn't see patients. What did I do? Well, I managed the business, and I spent time instead of directly working with patients. I didn't see any, and I managed, and I built it, and I grew it, and so the business is stronger. Our culture is better than it's ever been. The counselors we have on the team are just great people.
Yeah.
Not just good counselors, they're great people. I've learned a lot about hiring, a lot about firing, and a lot about the people. I'd rather make way less money and have a culture that I want to be a part of. Yeah. With people that are high character, high value. And our training.
Could you speak to a little bit, so True North people listening, what kind of resources, New Vision Counseling for them? What would they expect if they're looking for something?
Yeah, so if you wanted to get into counseling, we have a great group of a great team. We always have interns, we always have LPC candidates, and we always have licensed therapists. And so we really do the broad spectrum. The only things we really don't do is if you do like a little pot now and again, or you get drunk sometimes, like we do that. Any therapist that has any skills can do that. But the heavy addictions where you need to go to rehab, where you're stealing, that's kind of outside of what we do. You need a different level of care for that, and people that specialize in that. And then we're the ones that help you get your family back and figure that out and learn the coping skills. But we do most anything because we have people that specialize in children, families, almost everybody can counsel marriages because that's a big part of what we do. And when I really began New Vision Counseling decades ago, I prayed, Lord, where do you want me to focus? Where do you want me to niche out? And it was marriages, because if you do the marriage, you get the whole family system.
Yeah.
And if the kids are struggling, then you get to see the kids. And if the wife starts, you see the wife, she makes progress, the husband might come in, and your kids might come in. And when I was just starting out, I could see everybody, which that's like having a chessboard with all the pieces on the board.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how great is that? Because then I would know how to counsel this person over here so that it would fit over here when I counsel this person. And then I was just able to help them come together when their goal is reconciliation. And I would have such a great understanding of the dynamics of what they were really dealing with from all perspectives, which was beautiful. I don't have capacity now, but what we do is we staff these meetings, these cases now in our team meetings and individually, so that I can refer them to Josh, or I can refer them to one of our other therapists. And then we still have that. It's just not me doing all the work anymore.
Yeah.
It's parodied and brought around to different people and spread out. Yeah. And some people take insurance, some people don't. We see a lot of people. All of our guys have been to base camp. Now, there might be a different guy when somebody reaches out that hasn't been to base camp, but it is it's part of our process that you need to go to base camp as a guy.
Yeah.
Because it really gets an understanding of the men, and it gets a different level of our culture, of the way that I lead, and an understanding of that it's not just, I don't ever want people to come in for dollars for service, ever. If that's what you want, if you want to make more money than anybody, don't come to New Vision as a therapist. If you want to make a good living, a fair wage, and you want to transfer the life-changing power of God through exceptional counseling modalities and watch lives get changed on the daily, this is a great place to work. If you want to experience that as a client, it's a great place to come.
Yeah.
And here's the great news. We have so many therapists. Sometimes your personalities just don't match. That's great. That's fine. Like, dude, I tell people, I was like, go try it 2 to 3 times. I'm pretty impatient, so I'll probably go twice. And, I have a lot more experience, so I probably wouldn't need as much. But, 3 times, invest. And if you don't see the trajectory, going the right direction, if you don't match, if you're getting annoyed with them, and it's not because they're calling you out, it's because you're just not gelling, switch. I have people sometimes reach out and they're like, hey, we're going to this person. Can we go to this person? A lot of times people say, hey, can we see somebody until we want to get on your waiting list? I don't know, another person's waiting, but we want to see them for now, but see you later. That we're all about helping the people and what's best for you.
Yeah.
And so that's the goal.
That's good.
And so we can help people from a variety of situations. And a lot of the people that I help now, or I've helped in the past, they come back for one-offs, or they come back because they hit a rough season. Or, I also personally, nobody else does this in my practice, but I also do business coaching. I have a side business coaching. And because I feel like God's blessed me to be gifted in the realm of calling people up. And so that could be as a family man, that could be as a wife, that could be as a teenager or a kid, calling you up and helping you navigate, build that relationship, and then grow through it. It also helps call you up as a business owner or as a C-suite executive, somebody that's trying to raise a culture. And so I do events and I do some things like that. And I got more into that because, again, I don't know that I ever would have wiped my schedule like it was wiped. Like, I had a 6 to 8 month waiting list to get in to see me. And I just said, look, ethically, I can't let people stay on my waiting list. They can, but I really need to push them to get other people because I want them to get help.
Yeah.
And I felt like this opportunity presented itself with a guy that does this. He's like, I'd really love you to do this, Shawn. We could do this together. I'll take care of all that administrative work. So I did, and it was part of what God used to bring me out of my trauma.
Yeah.
Because I started focusing on other people, and it wasn't super deep. It was more about the 5 voices. It was more about calling them up in their leadership style. It was not as deep, but it was a broader impact. Yeah. So it impacted more people, and it has been great. And I thought of Berkeley because I don't need to do it. It's not something like my business and what I do. I can stay as busy as I possibly ever want. And there's so much opportunity to help people doing that. It was just something unique and something different than what I typically do. And so I started doing that more as well. And it's been great. I can do it as much or a little as I want. Yeah. And I kind of moderate how many people I see because it does take away from my other stuff that I do. And so it's been a good balance, and it challenges me in a different way. Because I got people over here talking about their family, and I have people over talking about their millions of this, and should I do this, and how do we do this, and I want this culture. This person's really negative, and there's for sure overlap, but it's 2 distinct focuses, and a lot of that is because of Berkeley. There's other things I've done that I'm thinking, okay, Berkeley would say, go for it, Dad. Yeah. Even this, having a daughter, she begged us to have more kids. Her and Hayden both. She was such a nurturer. She took care of people and animals oh my gosh, we've had so many different pets. Guinea pigs are nasty. No offense if you guys have them. They're nasty creatures. They bit, they stunk. Anyways. We had a worms escape once in our house, and it smelled like a dead cemetery, a dead worm cemetery. They somehow got flooded out. The thing clogged and drowned them. I say all that to say we've taken care of a lot of things. Yeah. And I know that being able to broaden my impact and care for more people, because, counseling is more limited, it's been a blessing. Yeah. I feel like I have a bigger mushroom, so it feeds a different part of who I am. And it's not easy. Like, none of these things are easy. I was really stressed out at first, and it was hard, and That's when I did fires so much, and my neighbor said, "Hey, my backyard, we don't really appreciate fires as much as you do." You know, he said use different language, of course. Um, he might not have been in a good mood when he sent the text, but yeah. And so it's just want to be clear that the optics from the outside are, oh my gosh, they've got so much, they're doing this, they're doing that. We feel like the blood of the Maguires is the foundation of what God, we built on the foundation of the blood of the martyrs and the blood of Christ. We're right above that with the blood of everything. And look, I will tell you, marriage is so hard. And I'll share what I feel like Tana wouldn't mind me sharing. Tana's tenderhearted, and she got her heart ripped out. And I was emotionally incapacitated and didn't have a lot of tolerance. I would say my son Hayden was the same, except for I could come back and apologize and be compassionate. He was just hurting and in a lot of pain too. He had skin grafts, and we've hurt each other so much. We've cussed more in probably our entire lives, not including elementary school, than we have since this explosion. Not as much now, but I mean, think about this. Like our house blew up, but it wasn't just our house. Like my body changed. Tanda, Hayden's body changed. Our friend groups changed because we don't have a daughter. And so it was incredibly hard to be around people that had I would tell you, Frontline Church is where we were at. They could not have been any better. David Adair, JJ Side, and some of the other people, they could not have walked with us anymore effectively. They couldn't have done, there's not anything more they could have done to love us well that I know of. But yeah, we couldn't go back.
Yeah.
Because to see the 7 family, kids, people with 7 kids, 5 kids, and coming up and all hugging us, it's great. Too painful.
Yeah.
We needed a new place to go.
Yeah.
And we've been around. It's funny. We circled back to the place we had the celebration at, All Saints. And it's because my son is there. He's well connected. They have a thriving youth group. Not that the other places didn't. It's just that's where he connected.
Yeah.
And so for the season, that's where we're at. And they're incredibly loving there. Incredibly loving. I feel like that we can get as connected and it's available as much as we possibly want to. But that's another thing. I'm still connected with my guys. Tana is with the girls. But her situation's different because nobody has little kids. And we're dudes, we figure it out differently, I feel like, than women do. And it's just been hard for her to connect and for us to connect together with couples. Because we have a 2-year-old and a 16-year-old. And our 2-year-old she's not a sit-down child. Most kids want to look over the glass. She put her foot up on the glass and tried to scale the glass and get over it and be on the other side. That's what we're working with here, Ryan.
Yeah.
And she's beautiful and we're so grateful, but we just haven't found that part yet.
Yeah.
But I believe this next move to this housing addition,
Yeah.
I think we'll have as much as we ever could want.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
And but I would just say the pain is real, and so much of my life has been trying to get to a place where we're there, and it's easier. And like I had a guy come in, he's like, "Look, you helped me through this. We saved my marriage. You helped me with my kids. We saved the kids. You helped me with my relationship with my in-laws and this, and it's everything's better. I just need you to help me. My wife, when she's having a bad day or struggling, it still affects me. I need it to not affect me at all, so get a divorce." Now, I've only recommended 2 divorces in 30 years of counseling, and both of them, the guys threatened to murder their families. I mean, I don't feel like that was everybody else, even if I think they should divorce because of abuse or this, I say you need to get to a safe place. But I'm not going to make your decision for you. Yeah. Now, I didn't want him to divorce, and he's got a beautiful marriage. His family is awesome in so many ways. But you can't stay with somebody and love them that passionately and not get hurt. And so you have this family, the Maguires, that was connected so tightly. Like you guys would probably think we're ridiculous. We did devotionals most nights. We did fun stuff. We just did life, bro. I mean, we went to the lake, we rode our bikes, and we rode back, and we filleted the fish while they were alive, put them on as fresh as you could possibly get, and we ate what we caught. Like, come on. That's cool, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then that was taken away like this. And people talk about their identities being shattered. Literally, like my physical, emotional, work identity. There's only one person left from the original crew I had when this exploded. Just one, maybe two, and my team.
Wow.
Because I've changed a lot.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm a better leader than I've ever been in that realm. So I make different decisions and I run my business way different.
Yeah.
I'm so culture life driven. And I leave so much money on the table because I want people to love people well.
Yeah.
And I want them to serve people well. And I'll say no if I don't feel like you can help me or I'm having trouble being around you, you don't get to work at New Vision.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you're like me, because nobody's like me on our team at all.
Right.
Like nobody's like me.
Well, I don't know many people.
I
that
don't
are
either,
like
right?
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. My son says, Dad, you know you're weird. I said, I prefer to say unique, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I'm not trying to be like anybody else. Why would I do that? God made me to be unique. Why would I try to be somebody I'm not?
Yeah.
Which is normal.
Yep. Well, Shawn, man, thank you for coming on. You are such an inspiration. And I know something I thought about at the summit when you kind of walked through your story is you had this question of like, of your strength, like, and all the things that you're having to go through now that on the surface level is weak, it's weakness. But at the same time, there's not many people on this planet that could go through what you've been through and still have what you have the strength that you have.
Thanks, James.
And so like the strength that you've had has just been such an inspiration to so many people. And I pray that God shows you those opportunities, that all the time, the people that you impact with that. I pray that this podcast does that for so many people. Like, man, if he can be through that, go through what you've been through, it can really shrink down what we're going through in our daily lives, right? And realize, man, like I can be better. Like I can love God. I can trust God. And so thank you for that. Thank you for walking us through your story and how painful it's been and still is.
And one of the things is just to encourage people. We're told how we should be. Like therapists have prescriptions, doctors have prescriptions. If you're married, your spouse will have a prescription. But I will say your life is going to come through the way God designed you to live. Not designed your wife, not designed your husband, not designed your kids, not designed anybody else but you.
Yeah.
And so if you need to go play pickleball, if you need to go sit by like I did fires every single night, bro. I went to the lake like every day. I went to once I got out of, I almost said prison. Once I got out of the hospital, I went to the property every day to beseech the Lord to give us back a life on that property.
Yeah.
He never did, but I did that. And I had people that I really got to see who people were. Some people I met with, they talked about themselves the whole time. That was a one-time meeting. And they just advice.
Yeah.
And there's other people I met with, and they gave me a little bit of advice, and they loved me really well.
Yeah.
And there's other people that just love me well and let me be and share and cry with me. And I saw the tears in their eyes, and I felt the compassion. Those are your people.
Yeah.
Those and just being wise of what you need in the season of life you're in. Because there are some people that were just so great then that I don't hang out with ever anymore. But God brought them for a season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's people that I'm engaging with now that would not have been appropriate for the season I've been in.
Yeah.
And so I just encourage people to take the time. And the only way you can do that I know of is you got to say no. You got to say no to the stuff like Netflix miniseries that are taking up your time, video games, or other things that are not giving you life. Like there's a difference between finding that which invigorates. Like this invigorates. Seeing you guys, like I'm going to walk out of here more than any caffeine could ever do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you guys are awesome dudes, and just your spirits, just the love that I have for you, the love I feel back. I'm going to walk away from this feeling more energized than I would have if I was at Starbucks poisoning myself for 6 hours with their drinks. You know what I mean? And all that caffeine.
Yeah.
I feel great. So just getting to know yourself, like base camp's a start, not a finish, but it's a great start to
Yeah.
get quiet and just to discover, like, be a student of who you are, and not in a way where you make everybody else serve you. Because listen, this is really big. Nobody would have known the journey I needed to take. And if I would have listened to the advice of most people, I would not be here.
Yeah.
And at times I would have we
You
talked
wouldn't be
about
married.
divorcing.
Yeah.
And look, I was not cool to be with at all during that. I mean, there was times I was great, but I just didn't have capacity to deal with emotions. Like everything had been wiped away. And so she needed good friends to tell me. And my friends headlocked me and woke me up, told me that I was a good, like they showed me, and they knew me enough to know what I needed in those times. And they cared enough to say hard things. And I knew if I want compassion, I call this guy. Decker's a pretty compassionate guy. If I want some strategies, I'm going to call Eric Joyner. If I want somebody to do all the work, I call Williams Espino. If I want somebody to be my save the day, I call Richard Milligan. Like different people for different. If I want somebody to boss me around, I call Trey Dixon.
Yeah.
You know, and to give me good, just tell me how it is. Like everybody has a different thing. If I want somebody to listen, I call Kevin. There's all these people.
Yeah.
That are fill spots, and that's such a big deal, is to take the time to realize what's working and what's not for you. TV every night doesn't work for me. Reading books and listening to podcasts and being around dudes that have what I don't have, patience, like that's just, hi, oh, you just punched me in the face. That's not very nice. Dude, your fist is in the air. My fist has already made contact. I came out like that. Everybody's fight, flight, or freeze. It's just your nature of how God wired you to be. And so I just encourage the people listening to this. For the men, bro, go to a base camp, go to another base camp, find your dudes. I tried to make the dudes that were in my life my dudes. I went to a base camp. I realized I needed to pay attention to they were educating me. They didn't want to go that route. They didn't want to get into the crap. And that's their choice. That's okay for them. Yeah. That's not what I needed, not where I was going, not where I wanted my family to be. So find your dudes that are going to be real. They're going to call you out and call you up.
Yeah.
Get to know yourself of what you need to be healthy. And I don't mean going to hunt for 6 weeks a year, leaving your wife to do all the work. I don't mean that. I mean in the rhythms of your day. Like I told you, I need to do cold plunge. No shame on everybody. If I was built like, you guys didn't have any health issues, why would I do a cold plunge, bro? I would just spend more time with God if I didn't need it. Yeah. So whatever those things are, and you're the only one that can advocate for yourself and schedule that into your day and be smart. And you got to cut out things that are not serving you as well, because you don't want things that just take your mind off. You want things that take you up, that heal your heart, that bring you closer to God, bring you closer to your family. Yeah. And then for wives, every man needs to believe. Every man needs to believe that he is respected and valued and that he's got what it takes. Most men don't, including your husband or the person you're dating. And so they posture themselves in such a way to never be in experiences where their insecurities are exposed. And when they are, they become really defensive, or they become a jerk, or they fill in the blank. And this is not an excuse for bad behavior, ever, 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 ever. If you're in an abusive situation, you need to get safe right now, no matter what. But this is you just getting an understanding of men. I want to believe that I'm still my wife's hero. I want to believe that my son thinks I got it. The fact that my son said, I was showing him pictures because we're moving. So I saw pictures I haven't seen in decades of me jumping really high. And he's like, dang, Dad, you really could ball. Up to that point, I guess he didn't believe me and thought I was lying. But that meant so much. And my wife said something too, and she's like, yeah, your dad. Bro, I could have ran through a brick wall with that encouragement. Yeah. Again, it's not to excuse bad behavior ever, but just know your words have an impact, and your belief or lack of belief in the person you're married to, it impacts the way that they feel about themselves. Again, they should go to God and not bring their report card to you. But man, if there's a way that you can inspire, encourage, and build up in a healthy way and not control or not take too much of what you should away, man, do those things. If you can understand a man's heart, like I tell men, I said, if you make love to her heart, a lot of times over time you'll get her body. You can have sex if you make love, if you're kind, if you're loving, if you do all these things, if you show up consistently in these ways, most times you're going to have a great outcome eventually. And that's going to be the rhythm of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Women, if you can respect and honor and find ways and tee him up to be successful and not show him how much of a piece of crap he is when he messes up, you might have a way different experience in marriage and in your family life. Amen. And by the way,
It's good.
fill your mind and your heart like I really believe I've educated myself. I so bad want to help people, including myself and my family and the people I serve. I feel that's a sacred privilege that I've studied, and I go all over to train and read so many books. I listen to podcasts of people that don't know nearly as much as me, and I learn. James, you said something. You don't have 2 master's degrees. You're not 30 years in. But I mean, I can learn from anybody, anywhere, anytime.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know I need to learn, and I know I have a lot of opportunity to grow. So make sure you posture yourself with constant people, whether it's a podcast, a book, friends, sowing into you what you need to hear.
Yeah, it's good.
Because it's not what you know, it's what you remember and act on.
Yeah.
That makes the difference.
Yeah.
Oh, I just want to say how much I love you. From the first time I met you, I remember it was at this the summit, or not summit, what was it? Momentum.
Yeah.
I remember thinking True North is going to change because of bringing you on, because you are such a different personality. I felt like you were going to capture people with your slow cadence of listening, of just your investing and the way that you looked and just the feeling about who you are. That because Trey's the opposite, he's a go-getter, and you know what I mean, which both are necessary. It's like my marriage. And you brought so much life. And really, you and Ryan, the next season of True North, I am so incredibly excited for the dream, the thing that I compelled for, and I think a lot of guys believed it too, but I tried to champion was, it's not what happens there. It's the follow through that when we're done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's what happens after the mountaintop. Because look, bro, I love the experiences, but I've been to Tony Robbins, Walk on Fire, and bro, nobody creates an environment like that guy. You didn't have dancers. You didn't have a $100,000 speaker system. You didn't have a whole thing rocked out. You didn't have,
Mm-hmm.
But it's what you're doing with the groups, with Frontier to get engagement, with the compelling movement to not just go out, but to go deeper, I think is going to get a different level of impact.
Yeah.
It's a thing that I believe, like when I started, I did my best at champion in the season I was there in that capacity. And I think a few other guys believe they all wanted it, right? And with the devotionals that's been written with it's just getting so much better every single time from when we started back here. I'm just so encouraged and so thankful for Ryan and for you, James, of how much you guys have invested in just taking what was started and building on it and building it in a godly way, not just a showy big way. But I think both are necessary. But I think the one that you're discipling and looking to create up champions of discipleship, reimagining what the True North experience is.
Yeah.
And the summit was a different experience that I've ever had.
Yeah.
With the 4 people in the group and going deeper. Oh my goodness, that was such a great move.
Yeah.
So keep it up. And all the little nuances, like we did the cold plunge in the river, which it's pretty rough that we were so cold. The hardest thing, I could barely get out. My feet were frozen ice blocks.
Yeah.
Thank God for Brandon Bull. I don't know, he bought whatever kind of plastic tennis shoes, size 15, they had left for me at the dollar store to be able to make it out alive and not be carried. But it's so awesome to be a part of a brotherhood of True North and everything that it means to so many of us.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Shawn.